I want to talk about the Keystone XL project, which is still alive. And this is another presidential executive order by President Trump, um, which he signed in late March. And this is a sort of circumventing gimmick against a court ruling against the previous State Department permission for the Keystone XL pipeline project. So the original proposal for this pipeline went down in 2008, so it's now approaching 11 years and counting. And obviously, the Obama administration previously rejected the project mainly on climate impact grounds. And this pipeline is particularly important for Canada because Canadian oil producers, specifically from the oil sands in Alberta, are desperate to find new pipeline capacities. So they need to reach U.S. refineries with their heavy crude oil, and the Keystone XL is an expansion of the Keystone pipeline, which has insufficient capacity to bring all the available oil down there to the U.S. refineries. And now TransCanada is a developer of this pipeline project, and they have seen the project cost increase by several billion. So they are now saying something about $8 billion from previously $5 billion of project cost. And this is a similar case, I think, to what happened to nuclear reactor building in America, where just the delays and the regulatory framework forced up the capital investment costs. So at some point, it didn't make sense to expand on the reactors. And this is apparently the strategy the climate activists who in particular don't like the Canadian oil sand crude are using here to prevent these kind of projects.
It's always striking to look at the history of costs with this kind of thing and timetables. I forget if it's 90 days or 180 days, but one of the first major pipelines, which is somewhere around 120 miles, it's called the Tidewater pipeline in the United States. This thing took, let's say, 6 months to build. And think about how long it takes to build pipelines now. And somebody mentioned yesterday to me that the Empire State Building was built in something like 54 weeks. And imagine building something like that today. And I forget how long the Hoover Dam took. But what you see is that even though technology and knowledge have advanced dramatically, build times for things have increased dramatically, whereas you'd expect them to decrease. And that points to there's a very anti-building mentality in the world, including various ideas such as anti-hydrocarbon, you shouldn't build pipelines. Those kinds of ideas lead to just the dramatic slowing of progress, and this is bad because this not only affects every project negatively, but it affects the funding of projects. Because if somebody sees the example of Keystone XL, how likely are they going to be to fund a pipeline? And then what's that going to mean for future progress? So it's really important that we extol building as a culture and that we denigrate blocking, except in cases where there are real builders involved, people who support building, but then there's some very specific good reason to stop some particular type of building because it's endangering people. But if we're talking about just wanting to block everything, this kind of keep it in the ground, don't move it anywhere policy, that is that is contemptible and really needs to be demonized in the culture.